Cold Snapdragon is an iconic snow plant in PVZ 2. It was added a long time ago, and since then it has been widely considered as an overpowered killing machine. However, what if I tell you that it's not? In today's video, we will attempt to beat the entire Plants vs Zombies 2 using only a level 1 Cold Snapdragon. Believe me, it isn't going to be the easiest task you could imagine. What about the rules of this challenge? Well, they're simple. First, I can only use Cold Snap and not a single other plant. Second, no leveling up, and third, no power-ups. I'm allowed to use plant foods throughout the level, but buying them with coins is of course forbidden to me. Without further ado, let's begin our Frosty adventure. Day 1 of ancient Egypt is going to be described with only one phrase: easy peasy lemon squeezy, as none of the local zombies could pose a significant threat to my cold body. However, you shouldn't consider this world as an easy one, as all the zombies that are tougher than the Conehead are already a significant threat to a Cold Snap. The following 5 days were skipped due to the inability to play with a Cold Snap, so next time we will stack with such levels, they will be skipped automatically. Day 7 began with an extra amount of sun in my pocket, which allowed me to place an additional Snapdragons across the first lines. If every single level in this game started with an extra 500 suns, the zombies would have no chance to enter the lane. Also, destroying a camel zombie using a Cold Snap is one of the most satisfying things you can do in ancient Egypt. Oh, I didn't actually see you, buddy. Day 8 was dedicated to a Tomb Raider zombie, which tried to impress me with its tombstones. However, it didn't take into account the fact that Cold Snap is a big fan of destroying cobblestones, so we weren't worried about its appearance. Oh yeah, extinguishing the torches is yet another hobby of Cold Snap. On day 9, we witnessed the first real threat approaching the lane, and that was the Buckethead zombie. You might think I'm joking, but unfortunately I'm not. Sure, if we have 2 lines of Cold Snaps, nothing and no one can stop us. But what if we have only a few Cold Snaps? What should we do in that case? That exact zombie is going to become the main threat throughout this time adventure. Day 10 was a usual one, since none of the dangerous zombies appeared on my lane. Once again, it's a great chance to tell you more about the details of this challenge. At first glance, this challenge may seem to be an easy one. However, when you dive deep into the details and try it on your own, you understand that everything isn't as easy as you might imagine it. Day 12 introduced us to a walking bunker known as Pharaoh Zombie. This body has a bit more HP than a Buckethead, but the low speed makes it less dangerous than a Buckethead. However, it is still a serious enemy, so we should always pay attention to stop it before the Pharaoh Zombie consumes a Cold Snap. That's how it works. Day 13 included some funny slimes at the back of the lane, which immediately became friends of my Cold Snapdragons. Once again, camels along with Coneheads can pose a significant threat to me due to their low amount of HP and slow speed. Day 14 included some more cobblestones along with pharaohs, so it was gratifying to break both of them. Unlike some previous levels, this one had a faster pace, which made the gameplay much more enjoyable. On day 15, we received a fantastic opportunity to plant even more Cold Snaps, as this time we had to defend my lovely sunflowers, which were placed on the banana cells. You know what? I love bananas. They taste especially good when you freeze them. With so much sun in my pocket, freezing everyone around was easier than a tower was. 11 frozen bunkers out of 10. On day 16, I decided to have some fun, so that's why I used a few plant foods right after the final wave to finish some of the last zombies on my lane. The Ice Breath of Cold Snapdragon is a fantastic weapon against all kinds of zombies. On day 17, I managed to gather a whole stack of plant foods, which is by far a remarkable achievement, since none of them were used while beating the level. As you may see, ancient Egypt is going pretty smoothly, but that's just the beginning, because some of the next worlds are going to be much tougher than this one. Day 18 was the first least-end level dedicated to camels. In such a situation, the only thing we need is 2 lanes of cold snaps, which are able to deal with all the upcoming zombies. No, seriously, this is the right amount of snapdragons to deal with 90% of the zombies, and if something goes wrong, you can always plant the 3rd line, which wasn't necessary in our situation. Day 19 repeated one of the previous levels, but this time with a high number of bucket heads. However, we were lucky enough not to spend the plant food on the upcoming enemy, so the level was beaten without using a plant food. On day 20, we had to defend with more sunflowers placed on the banana cells. It allowed me to gather so much sun that at one point I didn't know where to put some of the next snapdragons, as all the best cells were already occupied by either sunflowers or previous cold snaps. It is one of the rare cases when you hear about a massive amount of sun in this challenge. On day 21, numerous zombies attempted to eat my snapdragons, but luckily they appeared too late to consume at least one of them, since the defense line had already been formed at that point. Don't you even think about eating them, walking coffin. On day 22, we have reached the point where the 3rd column of snapdragons began to form. It is possible because I spent an insane amount of time beating a single level, as the level's pace decreases to its bare minimum due to the fact that zombies are destroyed very slowly. It took me 8 minutes to beat this level, which is a lot. Day 23 was one of the most interesting levels of ancient Egypt, as this was the first time we met Gargantuar in a battle of ice and powerful smashes. When we encountered our final enemy, we already had a strong defense line and enough plant foods to counter it. As a result, a big boy was countered using 2 of them, and we also planted an additional cold snap at the back of the lawn to counter an imp zombie. 11 floppas out of 10. Day 24 was yet another last-stand level on which I planted 3 lanes of cold snaps to stop a massive zombie attack. This level is a prime example of what I previously said when I mentioned that this plant has its weaknesses and it isn't as overpowered as many people consider it. Look, I've got 3 lanes of cold snaps, but walking coffins are still able to consume some of them. The only weapon I have in such a situation is a plant food, but I don't like to use it when it's not necessary. With that being done, we are moving to the piracies. Day 1 is always the easiest one, since none of the unique zombies had appeared on that level. Oh, except for a bungee friend, which was countered even before making the first step on the lawn. I consider it a huge success, my fellow ice cubes. Day 2 was a bit harder due to the appearance of a seagull zombie, which is going to become a significant threat throughout the piracies. Yeah, this little bird will create so much trouble for us. However, once you plant a full lane of cold snaps, they can do nothing to you. Day 3 was a full copy of Day 1, so I've got nothing to say about it. I still can't get a point of its presence in the game. Day 4 was the first level including the Buckethead zombie. Well, it was quicker than I thought it would be. When you've got enough snapdragons in the lawn, this zombie can be defeated in a standard way. However, when it appears too early, it creates too many problems. The low and upper lines are the most susceptible to such attacks. Day 5 was the prime example of how the seagull zombie can easily reach the lawnmower, and you can do nothing with that. Next time, I should pay more attention to water lines, as they are the main threat to my brain. At this point, I still have so many plant foods that I don't even know what to do with them. I wish I had them more in my next worlds. Day 6 was a repeat of Day 5, but this time I didn't lose the lawnmower in the same way I had on the previous level, so the lesson was learned successfully. Day 7 introduced a barrel roller zombie, which may cause us some trouble due to the hidden imps inside of it. In a worst case scenario, they can consume a cold snap and reach a lawnmower, so we should be aware of such a serious enemy. Luckily, it didn't happen with us on this level, so we can move to the next one. On Day 9, bad things started to happen. After the first wave, the Buckethead zombie had consumed my lovely Cold Snap like it was nothing to him. The second time the Buckethead came close to my Snapdragon, I didn't want to play the Russian roulette, so I fed my body with a plant food, which immediately stopped the zombie attack. Day 10 introduced us to a zombie that we can't simply defeat, as Imp Cannon is usually placed in a way that is unreachable for a Cold Snap. That is why I had to place a few Snapdragons at the back of the lawn, so when the cannon explodes, I would be able to deal with all the upcoming imps. As you may see, I made the right decision, since the imp attack was a serious obstacle to beating the level. However, we didn't lose a single lawnmower, so I count that as a victory. On day 11, I tried to place Snapdragons differently due to the appearance of all the 9 zombies on a single level. At that point, we can't simply place Snapdragons like we want to, as we always have to be ready for the attack of the Imp Cannon. On the other hand, it's a good obstacle that makes the gameplay much more interesting. Day 14 was the first last stand level of the Pirate Seas, for which I decided to place the maximum amount of Cold Snapdragons to make sure that the lawn is secured and not a single plant is going to be lost while beating the level. Even Popka the Parrot was shocked by the amount of Cold Snaps placed on the lawn. The rest of the level went pretty fine and not a single Cold Snap was lost while beating it. On day 15, I got a free cool body at the back of the lawn. Using a pre-planted plants isn't forbidden by my rules, so I'm allowed to play with a green body. The number of zombies we saw on the lawn was perfect for such a level, as we finally got the necessary hardness, which makes the gameplay insanely enjoyable. Day 16 was too easy to speak about, as sprint beans didn't actually need to be protected. Instead, they were protecting us from all the zombies we saw while beating the level. Everything was so cool that I didn't have to use the plant food to stop the zombie horde. Nothing special happened on day 17, except for a great number of imp cannons, which affected the placement of my Snapdragons all across the lawn. I had to ensure that none of the blow-ups would affect my defense line, and thus activating the lawnmowers. As you probably understood, everything went pretty good. Day 22 is one of my favorite last stand levels in the game, and this time I beat it in one of the most unusual ways. After spending all the given sun, only 3 tiles were left without a Cold Snapdragon. Fortunately, only a few plants were lost while beating the level, and if only I had correctly placed them, I wouldn't have lost a single Snapdragon, but that's just the details. On day 23, only a few Snapdragons were needed to beat the level, as it was a full copy of one of the first levels. Well, at least I had some fun while freezing the zombies. Day 24 was the final battle of the Pirate Seas, where we had to defend a few sprint beans from being eaten by zombie pirates. The hardest thing about this level was of course the imp cannons, as I had no opportunity to stop them. Fortunately, sprint beans were good at catapulting zombies into the water, so we didn't have to replay this level over and over. Of course, a few cold snaps were eaten while beating the level, but that's the least price we could pay for beating it. With that been done, we are moving to the Wild West. Day 1 of the Wild West introduced us to the minecarts, a mechanic that isn't going to be used a lot in today's campaign, since I prefer building a full lane of cold snaps rather than placing them in different positions. We're still at the point where level 1 is an easy one, so let's enjoy this moment. Day 2 had already introduced us to a prospector zombie, which is going to cause lots of trouble in the future. However, at this point it isn't so dangerous, but it makes me plant my cold snaps a few tiles ahead of where I usually do. It doesn't seem to look like a big problem until you meet a buckethead zombie, and you've got only a few cold snapdragons on your lawn. Fortunately, everything went fine this time, but I'm already preparing you for the questions we will solve in the future. Day 3 is a day of annoying piano music. However, we don't really care about its appearance, since cold snaps can cover each lane with its ice shots, so that the piano guy couldn't impress us. On day 5, we finally met my lovely Poncho Zombie, who is a true legend in the world of PVZ 2. If you're lucky enough, you will be stuck with the guy without a toaster on his belly. However, if you were me, the first poncho zombie you would see would contain the metal protection. Thank God I had that plant food in my pocket. It is only level 5 of the Wild West, but it feels like day 24 of the Pirate Seas. Day 6 was the first last stand level of this universe, and today we have a truly unique defense line, which consisted of cold snaps. Yeah, that is so unique. Considering a high number of poncho zombies alone with piano dudes, I am actually impressed that only a few snapdragons were consumed at such a battle. On day 7, plant foods became crucial to stopping the poncho guys at the beginning of the level, as I could do nothing against them. However, when a full defense line is completed, there is no reason to use them, as cold snaps can stop them on their own. Day 10 is an official day of frozen chicken. The first experience with chickens was fine, as none of them were able to get close to my cold snaps. Yet, I'm worried about their appearance when the line of cold snaps is still forming, meaning that some chickens can run up to my lawnmowers, and I'm actually scared of that. On day 11, I could spend only 500 suns, and that was the first time I used minecarts in today's challenge. They were actually needed in such a situation, as it was the only way to defeat the coneheads. If I planted cold snaps on the standard tiles, the coneheads would bypass my defense and then reach the lawnmowers. Of course, we couldn't afford it, so I was maneuvering minecarts like a pro. On day 13, we met our first bull zombie, which was immediately stopped with the help of the plant food. Yeah, that's probably the most dangerous zombie we face in the Wild West. It's hard for me to imagine stopping it without the plant food, as this zombie is a double headache. Not only the bull is a problem, but it's an imp zombie as well. The further we come, the more specific the problems become. On day 14, I was a few steps away from losing the level due to the annoying chickens that had activated the lawnmowers and thus provoking more chickens to appear on the lawn. Well, at least the piano man could pose no threat to us, so the only problem we had to deal with was chickens. If only I could fry them, I could become a millionaire and build my own KFC. Day 15 repeated one of the first levels and nothing remarkable had happened while beating it, so let's move to the next one. On day 16, we had to protect Johnny the Walnut from being consumed by our beloved zombie buddies. I was worried about Johnny's survival, so I even decided to feed him with a plant food, so that he could survive the massive zombie attack. Sometimes he was really useful in case of stopping the enemies right before reaching the cold snaps. Day 17 was a challenging level where I had to save the weird flowers from zombie trampolines. The number of metal poncho zombies along with bucket heads was really high, so plant foods were essential in beating the level. If Pirate Seas along with Ancient Egypt can be called easy worlds, then the Wild West is a stage of a medium hardness, since it wasn't that easy to beat it, and there are a lot of situations in which Cold Snap struggles to defeat the zombies. Day 18 was a fast one, as we needed only 1 minute and 10 seconds to finish it. Of course, a few snapdragons were lost while beating the level, primarily due to the chickens, but nevertheless, winners are not judged. Day 19 is a copy of Day 5, but with a few additional restrictions. It's hard to say something new about this level, since the new limits couldn't affect me, and I was playing this level like I usually do. On day 21, we once again protected the weird flowers from zombie trampoline. This time we managed to defeat the bucketheads without using plant foods, which was a massive achievement for us. What about the sun limits? Well, they couldn't affect me, since I'm not even able to get that amount of sun during the level. Day 23 is yet another level with the same restrictions. That's not funny at all. It wasn't that hard, but chickens were always 2 steps away from consuming my cold snaps, which made me worry about my snowy friends. And I don't like when someone makes me worry about my plants. On day 24, we had to defend 3 Johnnies simultaneously. That is a lot. My main goal for the entire level was to plant as many cold snaps as possible, as I knew about the final wave and the number of zombie bulls we would be stuck with. Fortunately for us, the defense line was prepared for a massive zombie attack and it was time to deal with the bulls. Thanks to a good preparation and a few magical plant foods, we managed to deal with the bulls and protect the walnuts from being eaten. Now we know who is the sheriff of this town. With that been done, we are moving to the Frostbite Caves. Day 1 of the Frostbite Caves began with melting a few pre-planted Johnnies and alone. Without a doubt, they played a major role in stopping the zombie horde by accumulating the bite force of bucket heads. Thanks to the walnuts, they couldn't get close to my snapdragons. Compared to the first levels of the previous 3 worlds, this one was much harder than all of them combined. Still, we succeeded, and none of the lone movers was lost while beating it. On day 2, my lovely walnuts were saving the situation once again, as the number of bucket heads had significantly increased, so we needed more cold snaps to deal with them. Only after beating the level could I realize that repeaters could be also melted, but I didn't see that opportunity while playing it. Day 4 means no Johnnies at the lone, so we have to find another way to beat it. Fortunately, that opportunity was found, and that is the correct placement of cold snaps. Yeah, that's how simple it is. Just find the right tiles to put snapdragons and they will be highly efficient. On day 6, we had a fantastic opportunity to get some additional sun by melting the sunflowers. Unfortunately for zombies, the cold snap can't be frozen, so it's immune to any wind or snowballs. Unexpectedly, even 2 sunflowers are way more than enough to generate enough suns to prepare a great defense line against the upcoming zombies. On day 7, my cold snaps were supported by Split P, which was actually useful, as both of his sides were working like a machine gun. However, it's not immune to the cold, so we had to save him every time the little dude became frozen. Day 9 was the official day of the dodo bird. It isn't that effective against the cold snap, but it can surely cause us some trouble while dealing with the rest of the horde. However, if you have a few lanes of snapdragons, this bird isn't a problem for you anymore. Day 11 is one of my favorite levels of the Frostbite Caves, as it combines a good hardness with the right amount of zombies and opportunities to deal with them. It won't be a huge surprise if I tell you that I started building my defense right from the final tiles, and step by step I was moving closer to the next tiles to expand the safe zone. Without a doubt, it was one of the best battles we saw in the first part of the Cold Snap adventure, since we defeated numerous bucket heads alone with the ice cubes without using all the plant foods. My main mistake on day 12 was the placement of cold snaps, as I put them too far away from the battlefield, so had to wait for a while for zombies to come close to my defense line. Except for that, everything was made right, since none of the cold snaps were consumed during a battle. On day 13, I repeated my strategy from day 11, where I began to settle the cold snaps right from the final tiles, and then, step by step, expanded them on the next few tiles, thus forming a good defense line for the rest of the lines. Don't forget that in this world, the zombies can't be frozen, so when dealing with the gargantuar, you have to be sure that you've got enough plant foods to stop it before it reaches the lone mover. Day 15 was probably one of the hardest levels of the first part of the Frostbite Caves, as since we're going too fast and the tile placement wasn't the best. Furthermore, there was only one plant food for the entire level, and for the rest of it, I was maneuvering my cold snaps only to save the pepper pools from being eaten by zombies. Honestly, I couldn't imagine that I would beat it on my first attempt, as the level seemed impossible. On day 17, we had to melt a lot of ice to release our friends from an ice age. It allowed us not only to kick away the dodos, but also to stop the frozen imps from getting close to my cold snaps. I like the Frostbite Caves for allowing us to play with lots of different plants throughout this time adventure. Now the cold snaps doesn't feel alone in the frozen world. Day 19 included many frozen plants, but only a few were released from the ice age. Even though the snowstorms attempted to break my defense, the cold snaps were staying like rock in its place, which nothing and no one could break. On day 20, all the local zombies were defeated without using a single plant food. Yeah, at this point, it's undoubtedly a huge success, as not even the ice cubes could break my defense due to the high number of cold snaps. Cold Snapdragon is cooking in this universe. Day 22 is a definition of phrase, and U is equal to a new plant, because this time we had some cute looking guacadoles being frozen in the ice. However, it's not all, because this level was also dedicated to whistles, which are a local edition of chickens. They shouldn't be underestimated, as they are as dangerous as running chicken from KFC. Day 23 is a fantastic opportunity to grind a great amount of sun and place as many cold snaps as possible. Of course, I couldn't miss that opportunity, so I placed 4 lanes of cold snaps and defeated the zombies like a pro. On day 26, I was able to melt the ice at one of the sun shrooms and thus gathered some more suns for the rest of the level. Here the only working strategy was one that I used on some of the previous top levels, where we began planting cold snaps right from the final tiles, and then, step by step, we expanded them further into the lawn. What impressed me the most was the number of zombies prepared for that level, as they were coming to the lawn without stopping. Day 27 was undoubtedly the hardest level of the Frostbite Caves for numerous reasons, and zombie spam was one of them. Not without the losses, but we managed to hold the zombie attack and even stop a few gargs from reaching my rotabagas blazed on the banana cells. Of course, some snapdragons were lost during the battle, but that's the least price we could pay for beating it. Day 28 was the last stand level, for which I decided to place 3 lanes of cold snaps so nothing and no one could break it. Everything went as well as we expected, so only a few snapdragons were lost during a battle with gargantuars. Unlike a big body, little imps could do nothing to me, as I prepared a few cold snaps to deal against them. So the Frostbite Caves are finished, and so is the first part of the challenge. It's November, and we're coming closer to the Christmas and the New Year holidays, so I hope that my challenge will boost your winter holiday mood, as Cold Snap really wants to do that. The next video is coming soon, my fellow ice cubes. Easy peasy dragon fizzy. The first part of the challenge wasn't that hard, but I can't say the same about the second one. In the next 4 worlds, we will face dozens of challenging levels combined with lots of annoying zombies. But before we dive deep into real hardness, let us enjoy the time adventure into the golden age of Central America. Day 1 of the Lost City is an exact definition of enjoyment, and that's because of the sun tiles. This feature is a real game changer for my challenge, as it transforms the cold snap into some kind of sunflower, a cold one. By the end of the level, I had over 3000 suns in my pocket and 3 lanes of cold snaps. So don't you still believe in the supremacy of the sun tiles? Because I do. On day 2, I had a fantastic opportunity to get even more sun by digging up the useless red stingers, which were pre-planted and not on the best cells. However, I decided to leave the last one, because why not? I think that my cold snaps were glad to see a new body on the lawn, as usually they don't see anyone else except for other cold snaps. This time everything went fine as well, and we managed to plant 3 lanes of cold snaps once again. What a fantastic world we are playing in today! On day 4, I did my best to protect Johnny the Walnut from a crazy man with a golden shovel. This time it wasn't that easy to deal with all the zombies, as the number of enemies had rapidly increased compared to previous levels. Fortunately for us, I placed cold snaps on the right cells and thus completed the level without losing any lawnmowers. Day 6 was remembered by me because of its interesting placement of cold snaps. The sun tiles were placed in the form of an arrow, so I wanted to match this symbol and place cold snaps in the same way. After finishing the main symbol, I decided to repeat it backwards and got a diamond-shaped figure. Sometimes we should pay more attention to things like this one, as PVZ 2 isn't only about zombie killing, it's also about finding your own meaning on each level. Nothing remarkable had happened on day 7 except for the appearance of an umbrella zombie, which is in fact an average enemy for us, as she isn't capable of doing any damage to a cold snap, of course, except for a classic bite. On day 10, the parachute rain had significantly affected the placement of my cold snaps, as zombies from the sky were a major threat to the cold bodies. Yet, we weren't doomed because of it, and in a few minutes, the defense line was successfully restored and 3 lanes of Snapdragons defeated all the enemies you see on the lawn. Day 11 of the Lost City isn't my favorite one, as it is a prime day of giant bugs, and I don't really like big bugs, especially a blue one. However, they didn't become a problem today, as the placement of cold snaps allowed me to minimize the potential troubles I could get from the flying bugs. Remember that some of the flying zombies are bucketheads, and they can easily consume a Snapdragon. Therefore, we should really avoid them at all costs. When I entered day 12, I couldn't believe that it was possible to beat it with only cold snap. At first, I decided to record it only to show you that getting 5000 suns with only Snapdragons is impossible. Yet, a genius thought had appeared in my mind, which told me to play this level as slow as possible, so I would get enough time to get as many suns as I want. Sounds too good to be true, however, it is what it is. I have collected 5000 suns right before the Gargs from the final wave entered the lawn. Isn't that what you required, PopCap? Even such an obstacle couldn't stop me from beating the level. Day 15 was dedicated to defending a few A keys placed on the banana cells. Considering the number of sun tiles I had, it was no doubt an easy level, as I had all the opportunities to plant as many cold snaps as possible. Ironically, we've got to the point where A keys were surrounded by cold Snapdragons, leaving them no chance to escape the trap. I don't know why he planted so many Snapdragons. Don't ask me this question. Day 17 introduced us to the imp with a tent, so we had to act fast to stop his bad intentions against us. It was one of the fastest levels of the Lost City, as the correct placement of sun cells allowed me to spam my cold snaps in the right amount to build a proper defense and finish the level as fast as possible. It took me only 2 minutes to beat it. Day 19 contained all the annoying enemies of the Lost City. Despite having more sun tiles than on the previous level, the situation was now easier due to the insane amount of zombies. It felt like they were coming without a stop, so I had to put all the efforts into the correct placement of cold snaps. Fortunately, the level was completed without any accidents, so we are moving to the next one. Day 20 is a day of a letter Z, and Z means zombies. Lots of zombies. However, not everything went as well as you might imagine it, as building up the defense in the Z shape isn't the easiest task I could give myself. Yet, by the end of the level, I finally did it, and all of my Snapdragons were placed correctly, reminding us of the shape of a letter Z. Let's just say that day 23 wasn't one of the easiest, all because of the imp tents. Even though a local Garg appeared on the level and smashed a few cold snaps, its appearance couldn't surprise me due to its low effectiveness. However, the same can't be said about tents, which posed a major threat to all the plans. Step by step, I was covering the lawn with new cold snaps, which allowed me to reach the tents and then destroy them. The Lost City shouldn't be underestimated, and that's for sure. On day 24, I had to protect my lovely, weird-looking flowers from zombie trampling. The number of cold snaps was enough to deal with all kinds of local enemies, so I had no worries about beating it. Additionally, the number of zombies wasn't as high as on the previous level, so it was successfully completed. After looking at sun tiles on day 25, I decided to place my cold snaps in a new way. At first glance, you might think that it didn't work. However, it did. The placement of cold bodies was so good that we were able to deal with both Indiana Jones and Imp tents with bad intentions. This level is a prime example of why you should never avoid creative ideas that pump up in your mind. Day 26 was a bad one, as I had only a single sun tile for the rest of the level. Mr. Floppy is mad because of that. Nevertheless, the golden shovels together with tanks couldn't surprise me today, as I still had enough snapdragons to counter all of them. At first, day 27 seemed to be an average level of the Lost City where nothing and no one could impress me. However, that's before the blue skull zombie came onto the lawn. This guy is insane. So, if you don't plant cold snaps right close to the lawn's entrance, they will just burn down all of my snapdragons. The worst thing about that is that I can't do anything about it. I can just sit and watch how they destroy my defense. As you probably understood, my first attempt failed because of that. However, everything went better on my second attempt, but still I lost 4 out of 5 lawn mowers and I was a few steps away from repeating this level. Yeah, I managed to hold on until the final wave, but it's more like a survival game rather than an average gameplay. The blue skull zombie is by far the most dangerous enemy we've faced in this challenge. Day 29 became the definition of a miracle because in a situation like this, the chances of losing a level increased to an extreme point. All the lawn mowers were lost right before the final wave and I had only a few hundred suns when zombies started coming out onto the lawn. However, a single plant food has changed the situation and gave me a chance to finish it in a good way. Then, a correct placement of cold snaps allowed me to deal with all the enemies, but it was still close to collapse, as the final zombie was defeated on the last possible shot. I was lucky, really lucky. They thought it was a survival game level where I had a limited space to plant my cold snaps. To understand how bad everything was, Indiana Jones landed on the final possible cell where I could plant my cold bodies, so I had only a few opportunities to defeat them. Thanks to the lawn mowers, most of the enemies were defeated before they destroyed my defense, which allowed me to save some more snapdragons and lawn mowers. It was a bright victory because we managed to hold off an insane zombie spam. With that being done, we are moving to the far future. Day 1 of a new world seemed unfamiliar, mainly due to a sun deficit, which is a key factor once again. However, it didn't stop us from making a good defense, so we were able to deal with all kinds of futuristic zombies, including the jetpacks. Day 2 was kinda similar to the first one, except for the appearance of Shield Zombie. Unfortunately for him, the futuristic shield is unable to hold on the snowy attack of the Cold Snap, so it seems that the Shield Zombie isn't a serious enemy for us. However, it's not the final zombie of the far future, and soon we will witness lots of dangerous robo-zombies. The most dangerous enemy we saw on day 3 was the Buckethead Zombie, so nothing much can be said about this level. Let's forget about number 3 and its existence. On day 4 we finally had enough sun to plant a lot of snapdragons so that I couldn't miss such an opportunity to place lots of cold bodies. Yet, due to the low number of serious enemies, the level was boring, but still I managed to plant 6 lanes of snapdragons, which is truly insane. Day 5 introduced us to the Robo Conehead, which is by far a dangerous enemy. Due to the high number of HP, which is double of that of the Buckethead, it's hard to stop a walking machine without using a plant food. However, we shouldn't forget about the power tiles, which are extremely helpful in such situations. Day 7 contained even more Robo Coneheads, and simultaneously even more plant foods. Actually, the number of them was so high that I managed to get to the final wave with a whole stack of them. On day 9, the game wanted to limit to me the number of plants that are placed on the lawn, but the PopCap developers couldn't expect that someone like me will try to beat this level with only snapdragons, and I wouldn't care about the number of plants in my lawn simply because I don't have enough suns to place so many cold snaps. That's how it works. Day 10 was the day of the Discatron 3000. Actually, I've got some mixed feelings about it, because on the one hand, it spawns lots of annoying zombies and thus pose a threat to my lawn mowers. Still, on the other hand, in 90% of the cases, it can't do nothing to my defense line, so it's just yet another annoying robot in this universe. The 11 was the first less stand level of the far future, for which I prepared a great defense, which consisted of 3 lanes of cold snaps and a few cold bodies at the back of the lawn to make sure that none of the zombies could hypothetically reach my lawnmowers. Everything worked like a Swiss clock until the bot swarm appeared on the lawn and destroyed a major part of cold snaps. Yet, we managed to hold on and eliminate the rest of the zombies without losing a single lawnmower. Day 12 was the first level, which contained a Robo Gargantuar, one of the most dangerous Gorgs in the game. The first one was stopped with the help of a few plant foods, and the same was done with the boys from the final wave. However, this time it required an insane 3 plant foods to stop the walking machines, which is a lot, to say the least. You shouldn't mess up with the guy who can destroy all of your plants using a magical laser, which you can't even counter. But before we move on to the following levels, take a look at a Happy Cappy. Everyone needs a bit of relaxation after such a battle. Day 13 is a day of a mecha football zombie, the most dangerous enemy of the far future. Despite the terrifying description, the zombie can be easily countered with the help of a single plant food. However, if you don't have one in your pocket, you are out of luck. On day 14, the game decided to restrict my budget to 1500 suns, which is a funny obstacle to say the least. Only after reaching the final wave could I spend this amount of sun on building up 2 lanes of cold snaps. Day 15 is an official day of a citron protection. They were pre-placed on the banana cells right on the lawn's entrance, so we had to make sure that none of the robo bodies could potentially consume my oranges. Fortunately for us, we needed only cold snap to protect them and a few more to deal with zombies from adjacent tiles. Not without the losses, but the level was successfully completed. Day 19 was the level dedicated to sun bombs, meaning we had no trouble with sun production. Despite building up 3 lanes of cold snaps, the number of zombies on this level wasn't enough to activate all of them, so the only good thing that happened while beating it was the appearance of the Robogarg. However, not even the metal pile could stand against my cold snaps, so let's jump into the next level. I really enjoyed beating day 20, as this time we had to protect my lovely star fruits placed on the banana cells. Everything was going pretty fine, as yellow bodies were able to protect themselves with a bit of help from snapdragons, which played a key role in slowing the zombies. Actually, I never thought about it, but starfruit and cold snap are a fantastic combo. Day 22 was the second last stand level, on which we placed even more cold snaps, so not a single zombie could think about biting my icy friends. Here I was really proud of myself because of the correct usage of plant foods, so that the zombies from the final wave could do nothing against my wall of snapdragons. Day 23 repeated one of the previous levels, but with a few more restrictions that couldn't affect the way we beat the day. I guess the best thing we can do in such a case is to move to the final level of the far future. I spent about 8 minutes beating day 24 because of the level's slow pace and the lack of huge zombie waves that could potentially break my defense. They were coming step by step onto the lawn, and only after the previous wave was destroyed, so it wasn't that interesting to beat the level. Far Future is definitely an amazing experience in case of cold snaps, because it teaches you to use the plant food in a proper way. So, with that being done, we are moving to the Dark Ages. Day 1 of a new world began with nothing, because suns are no longer falling from the sky. Abandoning this world because of that would be a bad idea, so I found a great solution known as Gold Bloom. It gives me 375 suns and emulates the number of suns we usually get for the time period it requires the Gold Bloom to recharge. However, that's not all. I'm allowed to use only 1 Gold Bloom for each level of the Dark Ages, so the game becomes possible to be completed. Yet, if 1 Gold Bloom is not enough, I'll try to beat it with 2 of them, which is equal to 750 suns. Usually it's possible to grind some additional suns by breaking tombstones, so the sun deficit isn't going to be immense. This level was successfully completed with only 5 cold snaps, so the situation isn't that bad. Day 2 was beaten in the same way and with the same amount of cold snaps. However, we also witnessed a ton of bucket heads, so plant foods became essential for beating the level without losing any lawnmowers. The situation is going way better than I expected it to be. Unlike a few previous days, Day 3 contained no sun graves, so the only sun source we had was the gold bloom. When I said that plant foods are crucial in the Dark Ages, I wasn't joking, because we can't do anything against the bucket heads. Thanks to the proper use of cold snaps and plant foods, we managed to get some sun to activate them and avoid failing the level. We've already gone to the point where each cold snap is crucial for beating the level at its bare minimum. Like I said, it isn't going to be an easy challenge. Day 5 was a usual level except for the appearance of Jester. However, in my case, the rolling guy is useless against the cold snaps, so his appearance didn't affect my gameplay. As always, a single gold bloom is way more than enough to make the level possible to be beaten. Day 6 was the first last stand level of the Dark Ages, where I placed all the cold snaps at the back of the lawn and didn't regret about doing that. It was an effective strategy since necromancy is already a thing here and it can significantly affect my defense if Buckethead appears right in front of the cold snap. However, everything went fine and not a single plant food was used while beating it. What a success! Day 7 introduced us to a night zombie which requires 2 plant foods to be defeated. That's a lot. Everything went wrong on my first attempt because a single gold bloom is not enough to stop a serious offensive. Yeah, 3 cone heads are a serious obstacle for only 3 cold snaps. Moreover, I had no additional sun graves, which made me replay this level with an additional gold bloom. This time everything went much better and we were finally able to deal with cone heads. Moreover, if you have 2 snapdragons that are attacking Night Zombie, it requires only 1 plant food to defeat it instead of 2 if you have only 1 cold snap. Yeah, mathematics is a significant thing in this challenge. On day 9, zombies were boosted with evil potions, making them more dangerous to my cold snaps. However, with the amount of plant foods and snapdragons, they turn out to be way less harmful than they could, simply because the freezing power of a snapdragon neglects some effects of a previously taken potions. The only negative thing that happened to us during this level was the loss of a lawnmower at the end of it. The 11 seemed to be a good level up until the first wave, when Wizard Zombie came onto the lawn. I already had a major sun deficit at that point, so I had to dig up the remaining snapdragons only to stop this zombie from turning my cold snap into a sheep. I spent over 30 minutes trying to beat it without realizing that the key to winning this level lies in correctly placing the cold snaps. After numerous attempts and almost an hour of my time, I finally managed to get the circumstances to finish it. Even in the best case scenario, I was left with a single lawnmower, so you may understand how hard it is to beat this level with only a cold snap. Day 12 was much easier than the previous one, and the only thing we had to do here was to defend the little puff shroom from disappearing. On my first attempt, I just forgot about its existence and they have disappeared. My second attempt was even worse, because puff shrooms had disappeared 2 seconds before the level would be completed. Well, I was really unlucky. However, everything went fine on my third attempt, and all the annoying wizards together with tough helmets were stopped before the puff shrooms disappeared. Day 15 was an excellent last stand level which I completed on my first attempt. This is the easiest type of level we've faced on this challenge, simply because we've got enough suns to build a proper defense, and the cold snap is a tough plant on its own, so zombies have a little chance to break it. The final wave was one step away from becoming a huge disaster, as a big part of my cold snaps were turned into sheep. Yet, not a single lawnmower was lost while beating it. Day 16 was one of the few levels that seemed to be impossible. After numerous unsuccessful attempts, I even quit the game because I couldn't withstand losing it over and over. Don't you even think about beating it with only a single gold bloom, as the pressure you get is enormous, especially when you see dozens of night zombies combined with wizards and supported by king zombies. And the best part of it is that you can't do anything about it. Cold Snap is not a magical weapon that is able to stop everyone and everywhere. However, if you learn how to place the Cold Snaps correctly, you might get a chance to beat it. Yeah, only a chance. Because now you have to deal with the rest of the enemies you see alone. Unexpectedly, the level was completed and I used only 2 gold blooms to beat it. Day 17 was really easy due to a high number of tombstones with suns, so it felt like a break after numerous harsh levels we faced previously. Yeah, the zombies were boosted with evil potions, but it didn't really affect the gameplay, and the number of cold snaps allowed me not to worry about everything that was happening on my own. Even the medieval gargantuar couldn't surprise my cold buddies. Day 19 was the final level of the Dark Ages. You might think it was hard, and I spent countless attempts trying to beat it, but no, thanks to the magnesium, which were designed to be protected, they actually served as an essential weapon against the knight and king zombies. They were actually paralyzed because of it, so cold snaps could do it best to counter both of them, and I wish we had an opportunity to defend this great body a few levels before, when the number of metal objects was immense. So, with that been done, we are moving to the Neon Mixtape Tour. Well, I'm really glad that we are playing with a Cold Snap, because I can't imagine beating this world without it, and Day 1 became the prime example of my words. The Neon Mixtape Tour known for its fast pace, and the Cold Snap is the only weapon that can slow down the rhythm. Do I have to say that this was the hardest Day 1 of all that we've faced before, or does everyone understand everything? Let me know in the comments below. Like I said, I'm happy that we're playing with a Cold Snap, because it is a working solution against the punk zombie, which is already a thing on Day 2, and it's not a joke. However, it doesn't affect the gameplay, so let's move on to the next level. Day 4 is already a day with 4 waves. That doesn't smell right. The number of bucket heads we see on the level is starting to annoy me, because now I need to build a better defense in a short amount of time with a restricted budget. The amount of suns I had before wasn't fantastic, but now things are going even worse for us, as we don't have enough time to collect more. On Day 5 we had to defend an annoying fat beat. Why do I call it annoying? Because this guy isn't capable of holding off any kind of zombie attack, which is a bad factor, because now I have to place cold snaps closer to the zombies to make sure that they won't eat a fat beat. And at the same time, we've got Johnny the Walnut. He doesn't care about the zombies and doesn't require any additional defense. If every plant acted like Johnny, I'm sure that this challenge would be less complex than it is. Be like Johnny, and life is going to be great for you. Day 7 included my lovely glitter zombie, which doesn't allow my cold snaps to attack the enemies that are going behind her, so she is working as a shield for the rest of the horde. Of course, because of the level space, not everything was going as we planned, but still, we managed to hold on and stop a giant zombie horde from getting close to my brain. I consider it a bright victory, my fellow ice cubes. Day 8 was pretty much the same, with the only difference being the amount of zombies and the number of waves that we had to face on this level. You might think that it's an easy level, but believe me, it's not. And the worst things are going to happen with us a bit later. Day 12 was a day when we finally met a rapper dude. Yeah, he's really dangerous if you have only one cold snap. However, if you have 2 of them, you have nothing to worry about, as they are capable of defeating him before he defeats my snapdragons. Oh yeah, it was also the first time we met hair metal gargantuar, but luckily we had enough plant foods to stop him before he smashes my cold snaps with a sound wave. Day 13 was a successful last stand level on which I planted a ton of cold snaps to deal with the upcoming enemies as fast as possible, so we provoked the following zombie waves and thus finished the level before the things started to go wrong. As I expected, something weird started to happen after the final wave, so I did my best to destroy the remaining zombies as fast as possible. Not without the losses, but the level was done. On day 15, I had to protect an annoying beat once again. Gosh, why do I have to do this? Anyway, this level became hell on the earth because of the rapper zombie, as due to its appearance, I couldn't place cold snaps behind the fat beat. It was a huge pain, and I spent numerous attempts trying to beat it, and when I thought I was done, this attempt told me that everything is possible. I just need to pay more attention to what is happening and alone. The final attempt went so well that I even saved a full column of cold snaps at the end of it. Honestly, I was surprised by such a result. Day 17 introduced us to yet another annoying zombie known as Breakdancer. Currently, he isn't so dangerous because the zombies that he pushes close to cold snaps aren't so dangerous. However, the situation will drastically change in the future, so wait for it. It's gonna be insane. Day 18 was an average level of the Neon mixtape tour on which nothing special has happened, so let's move on to the next level. Day 20 was a bit more interesting than the previous one due to better zombie combinations, but like I said, cold snaps can stop everyone and everything, so you shouldn't worry about its effectiveness. Congratulations, so we've got to the marking point because we have detected the first unbeatable level of the Neon mixtape tour, and it's day 21. Here I had to defend the weird flowers from zombie trampolines, but because of the enormous zombie waves, lack of plant foods and gargantuous appearance, this level becomes impossible to be beat. I tried numerous times to reach at least the final wave to estimate how many zombies we have to defeat. However, when I did it, I understood how horrible the situation is and that my chances of beating it had decreased to 0. Well, if you managed to complete it with only cold snap, please let me know in the comments below how you managed to do that. Day 23 introduced us to my favorite pixel zombies, the cutest enemies of the Neon mixtape tour. I'm a big fan of Minecraft, so beating the PVZ 2 level, which includes pixel zombies, was an immense pleasure. Oh yeah, the pixel melody is also one of my favorites in the Neon mixtape tour, so it was a double satisfaction to play it. Day 24 was an epic last stand level on which I placed cold snaps right close to zombies, so none of them had a chance to escape the cold breath of my snowy body. The holidays are getting closer, my fellow ice cubes, so I'm preparing something special to make your holidays unique and memorable, but you should wait a bit longer to see it. Oh, and I want to mention that I found a working strategy against the hair metal Gorks by simply digging up all the plants on its lane, and I accidentally used a power zap on the lower Gork, so you shouldn't worry about the number of coins I have now. Day 25 was finished in a few minutes because it contained only one wave, so it's hard to say something new about it. On day 26, I had to defend some spore shrooms placed on the banana cells, and it turned out to be a funny shroom spamming level. This time the cold snaps were working together with a great shroom, so the damage the zombies absorb has reached its peak. It was one of the most exciting levels we've faced throughout this challenge, so I highly recommend you to try it on your own, as it brings the needed hardness into the game. The following level was yet another nightmare, as I spent almost an hour in countless attempts to beat it. Well, the main part of it is of course the newly introduced boombox zombie, which paralyzed my snapdragons and thus broke the entire defense. I was not able to do anything in these situations, so the only option I had was to sit and watch how the zombies started to consume my cold snaps. This level is all about your luck and getting circumstances to reach the final wave and deal with it. You can imagine how happy I was when I finally did it. I was so proud of myself because I didn't give up and made it to the victory point. After such a level, day 29 felt like day 1 because everything went smoothly and I completed it on my first attempt. The boombox zombie have also appeared on this level, but not in the same amount as in the previous level, so I had nothing to worry about as my Snapdragons are capable of dealing with that number of zombies on their own. Day 30 was once again about a massive zombie spam, but at this point I didn't really care about it as I knew that my cold snaps are able to halt any kind of zombie attack, even if it is a hair metal gargantuar. The only thing you have to do here is to place the cold snaps in a correct way, which means to place them at the back of the lawn to win more time to build a proper defense. So that's it, that's how you should deal in such a situation. The final thing I can tell you is that it was the correct ending for this world, and needed hardness combined with a good strategy. So the Neon Mixtape tour is finished, and so is the second part of this challenge. It's almost September, which means that this series is becoming even more relevant, so I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. I hope that it brings you a good Christmas mood, because the Cold Snap challenge is aimed at doing that. The next 3 worlds are gonna be insane, my fellow ice cubes.